What's up, losers? I'm just kidding. You guys are great. You clicked on this video and this channel, that's always a good decision. I mean, of all the good decisions you could have made, this was the best one. So, what we are doing here today, we have an Excursion with the Triton V10 2-valve. This is a 2000 model. This particular V10 was built in January of 2000, so her birthday's coming up here in a little bit. Let's give a round of applause here. But we're going to change a coolant today. Now, I've done a video about putting a degas bottle in this. If I find it, I will link it in the description down below. It's somewhere on the channel, I'm sure. And I'm pretty sure it was the Excursion I did that on. It may have been that pickup. It's got the same engine in it. But point is, we're changing the coolant today. In the video where I change a degas bottle, I also flush the cooling system, which is a lot less scientific than it sounds, because the way that the Haynes manual recommended you do it was to come here to the thermostat house. I mean, drain the coolant first, obviously, but pop this out, take the thermostat out, put this back together, leave this hose off of the radiator, stick a garden hose in the radiator, and, you know, just say a little prayer, couple Hail Marys, you know, and let water run through the whole system, and it flushes everything out. And that works okay if you're just doing the engine, but it doesn't work all that well if you're wanting to like kind of clean up the radiator a little bit. And on the Excursion here, it's got all that rear heating and stuff, so it holds a little bit more coolant than, say, a pickup. So I wanted to be a little more scientific and for certain when I decided to change a coolant in this, because I am switching to a different type of coolant. What you see in here is green. At least I hope that shows up as green on the camera, and it doesn't look too bad. The coolant in this is recent, obviously, since I just put a degas bottle in it. But recently what I've been doing is converting the vehicles over from green coolant to the extended life. What I have is yellow extended life, but they also make like red and purple, and I think they make a pink. I mean, do your research, right? But the yellow extended life antifreeze coolant is going to be just fine for this application. That's what we're going back in with. And I just put a radiator in that pickup, so I have some experience with this flushing and changing method. Maybe this is how all the shops do it. I don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up these buckets just a little bit, because I want to try and save this green stuff. We have a couple tractors that still run green, and if I don't have to buy it, you know, that's good, because fewer and fewer places are selling it. So once I get the buckets clean, I'm going to open up the radiator drain. All the coolant will drain out. Of course, the lid's off so that it doesn't try and draw a vacuum. Once everything is drained out of this, I'm going to close the radiator drain. We're going to fill it back up with hose water, and we'll start the engine up, let it run enough to where the thermostat opens and it circulates everything from the engine and the auxiliary cooling systems that go back there, right? It'll circulate all that stuff, and we're going to do this 3 or 4, probably 5 times, just until the water runs clear when I drain it out. And then we'll know that the system's flushed pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. And then we can refill it with the correct type of coolant. Whatever water's left in the system from the rear heating and all that, it'll mix with the new coolant, and it won't be enough to dilute it to a percentage where it'll freeze or anything. We live in southern Kansas. It doesn't get that damn cold, you know, and if it did get that cold, then instead of running a pre-diluted, I would mix it myself and run a little, just a tad bit heavier concentration of antifreeze to compensate for the water that are still in both of the heating cores. So we'll go over a little more information here in a minute. For right now, let's get this thing draining. All right, we got everything draining in there. The coolant really does look pretty good. I am going to try and save it, just because green coolant's starting to get kind of expensive. So your drain is right there, and you can use channel locks to get it open. You can use a 3/4 wrench or a socket, you know. If you have the factory radiator, that's what size it all is. I usually use channel locks, but I decided to get fancy today and use a wrench. Also, I had to use this, which is probably better in the grand scheme of things, because the way the Excursion here is built, those buckets don't fit underneath. They did fit underneath the front on the 250 there, but that's a 2001, and this is a 2000. So between that and figuring that this is an Excursion and that pickup is not, that probably has a lot to do with this. So just little notes there. Now, while that's draining the rest of the way, you're probably curious. Let's talk about what kind of coolant we are supposed to put in here, just so nobody thinks I'm lying, okay? Let's also talk about how much coolant is in here. So according to the manual, engine coolant, gasoline engines, 30.6 quarts for the V10. Now, here's the interesting thing. If we come back here and we go to footnote number 4, if equipped with auxiliary rear heater, add an additional 1.5 quarts. Okay, so that's going to bring us up to, unless I can't add, that's going to bring us up to like 32.1 quarts. And if we divide quarts into gallons, that is divided by 4, which is going to be about 7 to 8 gallons is how much you're going to want to put in the Excursion here. Now, the other thing that the manual says is to use premium engine coolant, Motorcraft premium engine coolant, green in color. All right, do not use orange extended life coolant. Well, I'm not using orange extended life coolant. I'm using yellow extended life coolant. But here's the other funny thing, and somebody might argue with me in the comments about this. Extended life is extended life. Okay, so, I mean, no, you shouldn't mix different colors of coolant together, but if you mix like orange and yellow, it's not the end of the world, right? If you mix extended life with conventional, which is pretty much any color with green, you're not supposed to do that. That's bad. But you can mix extended life together if you have to. Just try not to. If you bought orange and you put in this, or if you bought yellow, and I'm going to use yellow, it's real pale, it's hard to tell, but that's all this is going to get from now on is yellow extended life. And the coolant I'm about to use is pre-diluted. You can mix your own if you want. You're supposed to use distilled water, 50-50, you know, half antifreeze concentrate, the other half distilled water. Most of you are going to use hose water. I won't tell. I'm a farmer, okay? I don't care. I run green coolant and everything, or I did for a long time. Even the 6.4, that is supposed to have yellow, but it's run green. It loves it. It doesn't. I am scared to death to take that front cover off. There's going to be cavitation like you wouldn't believe. But back to the Excursion here. You're looking at about 7 to 8 gallons of coolant to refill. Of course, when you're refilling this to clean it with just hose water, that doesn't so much matter. So just purchase accordingly. Now, another thing. I don't care what brands you buy. I don't care if you buy Valvoline. I don't care if you buy Ford. I don't care if you buy Fram or Keystone. Or not Keystone, Prestone. Keystone's damn close to water if you ask me. But it's not antifreeze, so don't use Keystone. Prestone, that's the brand I'm thinking of. I don't care what brand of coolant you buy. As long as it's the right color, I don't really care. You can put green back in this if it's your vehicle. I do not care. I'm a farmer. I am not going to judge you. I am using the Oil Supplier Special. We bought a barrel of 50-50 extended life from a local oil supplier just for the tractors. And I've been converting all the vehicles over because, well, you know, 55 gallons, that'll do a lot, even if you're doing tractors. So that's what I'm going back in with. Now we just play the waiting game. We got our first 4 gallons or so out, and it's hard to tell on camera. It is kind of dirty, but it will work very well for a tractor. And right now, well, really, we've only got one tractor, actually, that uses green, which is the 875 Versatile, but that's okay. That'll come in handy. Those tractors come with filters on them, so we can put that coolant in there, and the little bit of dirt and grime that's in there will filter out. So we're still draining. As you can see, one of the things I went ahead and decided to do was pull the thermostat out. And it's sitting right over there. So the thermostat housing is right here. There's 2 bolts. It's not hard to take out. Just disconnect your cylinder head temperature sensor, which I'm going to plug back in now. Just disconnect that, just so you can get to that bolt a little easier. Pull them out. There's a seal that goes around the thermostat here. I would advise having another seal on hand. They should be fairly common. Should be the same thermostat for all these Triton engines, and they made a lot of them, not just the V10. So that seal should be common. Get another one of those to have on hand. I went ahead and put the seal back in. You don't have to. I'm theorizing that that will help with the leakage while I'm rinsing the cooling system out. But I pulled the thermostat. That way everything can flow better. Now, before we go start this up and circulate, the question is going to be asked, how much water should you put in here? And how long does that usually take? Well, basically you want to keep adding water until it quits dropping below about this point on the degas bottle. And when you are running this, I do not put the cap back on the degas bottle, the coolant tank, whatever you want to call it. I don't put the lid back on. I leave it off because all we're trying to do here is get this hot, or just warm, and I keep making a mess over there. Anyway, back to my point. All we're trying to do is get this warm, okay? Just so we know for a fact that everything's circulated good. I just use that as a gauge point, if you will. Quite literally, actually. So we're going to start this up. We're going to let her run. Obviously, the drain's closed. Leave that lid off there. And on this, it may not take as long as on my pickup, but we'll see. So we'll just go ahead and start her up. And when it starts, it is going to suck coolant in. I don't know if you guys can see it out there or not, the liquid level. You probably can't see it very well because I can't, but there is going to be air in the system no matter what you do until you run it and the water pump starts spinning. So all we're going to do is run this until the needle hits that lower mark there. That's how we know that it should be just warm enough. It should break free anything. It will have circulated good. We will have worked all the air out, and that's just how I gauge it. You can do a little bit differently if you want. Biggest thing is you don't want to get it much past that mark because then the coolant will be too hot and you'll burn yourself draining it unless you let it actually cool down for a bit, if that makes any sense. So don't hurt yourself when you're doing this part because it doesn't take a lot. Alright, couple minutes later, we're going to take her off of the high idle. Well, 2000's a little bit much for high idle. You get what I mean. We're pretty close to that mark. We're going to call that good enough. Shut it off. Leave the key in because I've disabled the door ding because that's annoying. I've actually disabled a lot of stuff that you're probably not supposed to. So, as we can come and look right here, ew, look at how gross that is. This is going to take multiple flushes. So now what we do is we come back to here, we open that up, and we drain it again. And we just repeat this process however many times until you are satisfied with how the color of the water looks once you're draining it out. I like it to be pretty clear. This is going to need quite a bit because it's filthy. And this is why I don't like the other method of flushing this, where you just stick a garden hose in and you're depending on basically gravity to flow everything through here. I want some pressure and some real movement of water to break a lot of the crud loose in the engine and the radiator and flow it on out of here. And before anybody asks and says, well, what about if you break any giant flakes loose and it plugs the radiator up? Well, here's the thing. That's the risk you run. Okay, you might break some debris loose that's pretty big, and it may clog a couple of tubes. Ugh. Sorry. But again, that's just a risk you run. So draining it this way is about the best you can do. It's very effective, in my opinion. It gets a lot of stuff out, and if you change your coolant every 150,000 miles or so, it shouldn't get this dirty, but this has hardly been flushed or changed since it was built. So there's a lot of grime in there. And I'll get back to work draining, and we'll check in later when we got some pretty clear water. That's the results of the second flush. It's a little bit lighter. Instead of looking like coffee, it looks like hot chocolate now, so we're making progress. Round 3 of flushing. It's actually looking a little bit better. We still have still have some junk in there. As you can see, those two center chambers are a little bit dirty, but it's starting to look clear. So I think two more rounds and we should be good. Round 4. It's better. May have to do 2 more. It's nasty in there. I don't know how much of it's dirt and how much of it's rust, but it's pretty filthy. I also think what I'm going to do is after it drains out this time, I'll take the degas bottle off and I'll rinse it good, because I notice a lot of the dirt's getting trapped in these little pockets inside, and I think that's making this look dirtier than it is. But it is clearing up, if you guys can't tell on camera. Well, that is round 5 of running water through here. I'm starting to get a little concerned because I took this off and I rinsed it out pretty good. And now we're back to what I can only describe as hot chocolate in color. So this is, I didn't realize it was this filthy. That's a little concerning, but it is better. Yeah, it's better. We'll just keep flushing it. I mean, you know, this is kind of worst case scenario, so it serves as a good example for video. Hopefully you don't have it this bad, but yeah, this is this right here is the 5th round of water, and it's still pretty dirty. So I'll just keep plugging away. I have to finish it tomorrow though. Sun's kind of getting low. Next day now. It just got too late last night, and I decided it'd be better to finish this today. So what I've decided to do, because this is extremely filthy, and I mean very filthy. I'm quite surprised it's that dirty in there. What we're gonna do, I mean, we're not pouring Snapple in there. That's for me. What we're gonna do is run some of this dishwashing detergent in there, about a 1/4 cup. So I'm gonna pour some in there. I'm gonna fill it up, and we're gonna let it get nice and hot, and we're gonna let it circulate. I'm not gonna put the cap on it. I don't want it to come up to pressure. I just want it to get, you know, really good and hot and circulate through there with this stuff, right? And then we'll see kind of what that does. And somebody might throw a fit about what I'm about to do, which quite frankly, that's the risk I run when I make videos, is that somebody is going to throw a fit about what I do at some point. And that's okay. That's why the comments exist, and somebody can go down there and tell me I'm stupid, like, oh, don't do that or you'll melt your engine. Well, we'll find out pretty quick, and then you can learn from my mistakes so that you don't make the same mistake, because I'm not a professional. If you haven't figured that out by now, then maybe you shouldn't be working on your own stuff. So anyway, we're going to dump a pretty good wad of this in there, and we'll make the cooling system smell nice and fresh, get her sparkling clean, and we'll see what that does, because I'm kind of getting tired of every time I run water through this, it comes out looking like hot chocolate. Well, it's still brown, but is a little more opaque than it was. So, I mean, I think we're going good here. I'm gonna let this cool down for just a few minutes, and then I'll crack it open. We'll drain it and see how it looks. Let's see how we're doing. Oh, that's nasty. It's getting better, but it's still pretty gross. I think next I'll just run water through it again and see how that turns out. We may have to run another round of detergent through. I don't really want to, but you know, that's what we bought it for. We don't have a dishwasher, so you know, it's not like that came from the house or anything. Just the dollar store special. So this should be about done. We'll let it finish draining and go at it again. All right, so this would be round 7, and it's actually looking quite a bit better. I can actually see some actual water and not just mud or rust floating around in there, if that makes any sense. Like I can see the difference between the water and the floating sediment. So this is good. What I'm going to do, I'll drain this. I think I'm going to run one more round of detergent through, and I'll rinse that, and then I think we'll be okay, because this should have most of the stuff broken loose. I just want to make sure I get as much as possible out, since I'm doing this, you know, now's the time to do it right. So I'll just come back when I am confident everything's fairly clear, and we'll fill her back up with coolant. We'll fill it back up with coolant, not just water. All right, it's a couple hours later. You can see down in there. I believe, if I've been counting correctly, this is round number 11. I did run 2 rounds with detergent through it, and quite frankly, I think that's about as good as we're gonna get. There is a lot of rust in there still, but I've gotten the vast majority of it out, and quite frankly, I'm pretty happy with that, because I'm sick of running water through this. So I'm gonna go ahead and drain this out, and we will refill it with some extended life coolant, and it should be happy. The final stage of changing your coolant out, filling it, it's not really a complicated process. It's pretty simple, but thought I'd throw this in at the end of the video. So what I'm using, again, is an extended life coolant. It's in these jugs, but it is ELC. I have marked it as such. We bought a barrel of it, and you know. So when you do this, you got to remember, especially on the Excursions, that with all that heating system and all that, the heater cores, there's going to be air and additional water and stuff left in the system. Now, I mentioned I put detergent in, and I've gone through a grand total of about 11 rinses on this system. 3 rinses followed the last round of detergent. So we made sure to get all of that out of the system. We don't want any of that trapped in there. Little bit's not going to hurt anything, not on something this old. So you want to fill your coolant reservoir as full as you possibly can. And I did put the thermostat back in, just so everyone's clear. And when you do that, make sure you shove your hoses on all the way. Okay? There's a little nub back here on the thermostat housing. Make sure you shove your hose on there all the way. And put your clamps back where they were originally when you took them off, because those clamps have essentially worn to the hose a specific way. If you try and rotate that clamp on an old hose, it's very good chance it will go to leaking. So that hose is fairly new, and I made sure to position those clamps exactly where I wanted, so if I ever had to take them apart, they could go back in more or less the same spot. And so if you have a little bit of leak, you might try adjusting your hoses there, just before I forget. Now, let's hop in here and start this up. Now, I put the cap on there just to make sure that it didn't burp, you know, but we're going to pop it off here in just a second once it pulls the coolant through the rest of the system. Now, you will want to make sure that your heater is on for your front and your rear. Okay, you're going to want to make sure your blower motor's on and everything, but you definitely want to make sure that this is on, because that's going to move those heater valves around to circulate coolant through everything, to make sure you get all the air out of the system and everything is primed and ready to go. And then also you can judge on the temperature coming out of your vents and registering with your engine temperature, which I forgot to plug in. I need to do that. You can see how hot it's getting, and that means there's very little air in the system. So let's plug the cylinder head temperature sensor in, and try not to do this when the engine's running. It's a little dangerous. And so then we're very carefully gonna pop that off. I've got about 3 3/4 gallons in. I don't know where they got that 30 quart measurement from. You're not gonna add 30 quarts back to this. You shouldn't have to. Leave your cap off. You're going to want your engine to come up to operating temperature. That way the thermostat will open and it'll circulate everything through the system. It'll get all the air out. So it should be opening at about that mark, and we should be able to look out there, and it should be going down, but we're going to rev it up a little bit just to help it. See, it's going down. And I'm not doing much here, just about 1,500 to 2,000 is more than enough. It helps when it's warm outside, everything heats up a little bit quicker. And you got to remember your coolant will expand a little bit when it gets hot, as you know, that's just physics, that's how stuff works. So you don't want to fill it clear to the brim, your degas bottle. You just want to top it off as needed. You'll have to add more after you run this for a minute. All right, our thermostat should be open. So, all we got to do is monitor it. Go ahead and throw the cap back on for right now. It'll pressurize and equalize and do everything it's supposed to do. And then just check it for about a week afterwards and make sure it's at the cold fill range. And if after a week you're still adding noticeable amounts of coolant, you might want to double check for a leak. Check your water pump, check your hoses, make sure your thermostat housing bolts are tight. Keep an eye on your passenger floorboard right here, because if your heater core is bad, it'll start leaking out of here. You'll notice it. But we're getting warm air coming out of there. Everything's circulating. A lot of lines to fill up. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the process of changing the engine coolant on a 2000 Excursion with the Triton V10. If you are unfortunate enough to have the 5.4 V8, the process is similar. The process is also similar for the 7.3 diesel, and it's pretty much the same procedure for any of your Super Duty pickups. So, with all that being said, I'll get off of here. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you found this useful and entertaining. And we'll just catch you in the next one. See you later.